Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the DWS Community Cafe. We're really pleased that you could join us today and take a little moment out of your day. So we want to just create this community to give our customers just how to make the most of their investment in the Dimension products. So, you know, we would like this to be as interactive as possible. We understand if you don't really feel that you want to share your views or your opinions at the moment, but if there are any questions, if there is anything you want to, you know, discuss while we have our solution experts on the webinar, we would be really delighted to hear from you. So to just go through what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about Dimension Focus, the extract and upload facility. And again, if you have any questions, please use the chat box, or we can, you know, we're very happy to hear questions from you individually. And again, you know, really feel if you want to reach out to us about anything, we'd be more than delighted to hear from you. So with that, I'm just going to hand over to Lee Balsam, and he will take you through Dimension Focus using the extract. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm assuming you can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I will just move this window out of the way. So welcome everybody. We're here today to talk about the use of the Dimension extract utility. It's pretty a dry subject matter, but hopefully we'll make it as interesting as we can. And specifically with the Dimension extract utility, we're talking about it in regards to its use with Dimension Focus, which is one of the products that we offer. The extract utility is also available for other products and services that we do, and we'll kind of catch a glimpse of that as we go, but primarily we're here to talk about it in relation to Dimension Focus. And so what I thought I would start by doing is talk about what is Dimension Focus from a high level perspective. There are other sessions in the series of Community Cafe meetings, webinars that we're hosting that do dig into more of the specific details within Dimension Focus, so I don't want to labor it too much. We're here really to talk about the extract, but I thought I'd set the scene, because without focus, there's no extract, and without extract, there's no focus. They do go hand in hand. So Dimension Focus is a product designed to help you, our customers, plan and manage your testing. And your testing takes place specifically with Dimension Focus when there is an E1 change event. And that change event is usually in the form of you opting to take an ESU or a set of ESUs, or an update, or a combination of both, culminating almost all the way up to the code current event, that annual event where you take an update, a whole bunch of ESUs up to a certain point in time, and that is going to introduce a substantial amount of change in the standard software into your system. And all of that potentially requires a lot of testing, particularly because ESUs contain low-level objects, business functions, for example, table changes that Oracle are introducing. When those low-level objects are affected, knowing what calls those objects, what are the parent objects, the applications, UBEs, the functional areas that are impacted as a result of those changes coming through the door in the ESUs, is the question, is the big one. How do you know what to test? What's impacted directly, what's impacted indirectly? You might have custom objects, for example, that refer to objects, standard objects, like calling a business function from your custom code. If that custom code has changed, then your if that standard code has changed, then your custom object will probably require testing as well. So knowing all of those combinations is a big deal, part of the questions you need to ask. And so Dimension Focus answers those questions. It tells you what you need to test, but it also tells you how to test an object as well. So down to the event level of detail. So for instance, if you have to test P4010, sales order entry, it's a big deal. But if you only have to test elements of it, portions of it, you only need to go in a particular form, and you only need to tab out of a particular field, that would reduce your testing substantially if you don't have to test non-impacted areas. So Dimension Focus also tells you that, what not to test. Don't waste your time testing functionality that remains unchanged. That is wasting everybody's time. focus your attention on truly what has changed and what therefore needs testing. As I mentioned, dimension focus it talks to or identifies if you have any custom objects that are impacted or custom code in standard objects, your mods to standard. So you can allocate testing amongst the project team. And so therefore you can manage these testing projects as a result of ESU change with detailed analytics from dimension focus. You have greater control. It's a faster approach to testing. It's more efficient. You will get it done far more accurately by that pinpoint testing. So that's dimension focus. But before we can process a dimension focus run, before we can perform the number crunching, the technical analysis, and present that information back to you in the Dimension Hub, before any of that can take place, we have to perform, or you have to perform, a dimension extract using the utility. So what is it? It's an easy to use utility that is installed at the client, at your site. And what it does is it extracts all the details needed to perform that dimension focus number crunching, all that analysis. You download the software from our website. I'm not going to go into that detail in this session. All of this information is provided along the way when we communicate with you, pass you some information, some PDFs, some documents, and so on, supporting files. Simply you download it from our website. The extract will run on either a FAT client or a VM installed with a package of both prod and pristine in the same snapshot. And it doesn't have to be a brand new package either, by the way. It's just as long as it can sign into prod and pristine, and the ESUs that you wish to analyze. So you'll have identified which ESUs you want to process over, and you will have downloaded those ESUs using the change assistant from Oracle. You don't install those ESUs yet because we need to be able to do a comparison between your current pristine and the ESUs, and the delta between those two, it tells us exactly what Oracle have changed. In other words, what is the change being introduced to your system? The extract pulls the contents of the object's spec files. It does not go near any business data of any kind. It is purely interested in the code, in the logic, in the specs of your applications, your UBEs, your business functions, and other object types. And that information is then passed through our cross-reference, and that's how we can tell the link between parent objects and their children. When the extract runs, each object that is extracted is placed into its own unique .dws encrypted ASCII text file under the local folder in the C drive DWS dimension. So as it runs, you can monitor its progress by diving into that folder, into the subfolders below that, and seeing how it's getting on, because each object becomes its own file. The beauty of the extract is its level of detail. All the spec information is captured. So Dimension Focus will be able to tell us if anything has changed out of the results of the extract. And that could be everything from large volumes of code, logic that Oracle has added. That could be ER code, it could be C code, it could be business service code, it doesn't matter. All the way down to the movement of a control by a single pixel. We can tell if you've moved, if Oracle have moved a pixel to the right, a field a pixel to the right, or what have you. And everything in between those things are all captured by the extract's detailed view or capture of the object specs. We also capture all properties, checkboxes, all the settings at all levels. All of that is captured as well for interrogation. So anyone on the call here who has a developer background will know that in E1, particularly in applications, there are, and UBEs, there are properties behind grids, behind forms, behind the application itself, behind controls, all over the place, where there are properties, checkboxes, settings that you can turn on or off away from standard, and they affect how an application runs at runtime. And Oracle do the same thing, of course. They make these changes, and so capturing all of this information is critical to understanding what Oracle have done in terms of changes they make within ESUs. So that information is captured too. Also, the extract captures all object types. So it's not just objects with logic, so not just apps and UBEs and business functions, but also things without logic, but they still have a spec. They still can be changed by Oracle. So data structures, PO templates, GTs, etc. So those are caught by the extract as well. So some tips and some prereqs, because before you run the extract, there are a couple of things that need to be done. If you're in a 9.2 environment, which you will be if you're using Dimension Focus, then your pristine environment should be at the same ESU level, or very close, as close as possible anyway, ESU level as production. Historically, JD Edwards customers often let pristine fall behind, just the nature of it. But under the continuous rollout delivery method that Oracle are now sticking with 9.2, it really does, and you have that code current events happening every year or every so often. It's really important to ensure that production and pristine remain at the same ESU level. It makes the job of keeping code current a whole lot easier. Now, the extract, I mentioned this earlier, does support other products and services of DWS. I just thought I'd throw that out there because it isn't just Dimension Focus. As I say, it's downloadable from our website. It installs in seconds onto that FAT client or the VM that you have set up. Now, that extract runs on one of those machines, a FAT client or a VM, that's installed with that development package of production and pristine. It does run more predictably from a timing perspective on a FAT client. VMs, we experience quite a broad range of performance from a VM. If a VM is spec'd up quite nicely, it's almost as quick as a FAT client, but we have had clients where the VM, it does run a whole lot slower too. So I'll just say be aware of the spec of the VM that you use to install and run the extract on. You need a E1 user and password credentials to access PD and PS. The reason it has to be the same E1 user and password is because you enter one set of these into the extract window. We'll see this in a moment. And what the extract does is it signs into prod, it does the extracting that it needs, it signs out, then it signs into pristine with the same credentials. So as long as you have those set up, you'll be good to go. We do recommend prior to running the extract that when you install these packages onto the extract machine, that you manually, the usual way, sign into prod, make sure it works, make sure you can access OMW, make sure you can see some object specs, and if you can, great, then do exactly the same in pristine. And if you can do that manually on the machine, then the extract should be fine, good to go. But definitely do take advantage of the DWS pre-extract check to validate your process and your setup. Often we provide all the user guides that you need and the supporting documents and so on, but we still have customers who just some little setup error, they run the extract and it doesn't work, it falls over, or it completes and it's not quite complete because the settings weren't quite there. And then it's fine. I mean, it is what it is, and we just have to go back and get it to rerun under the correct settings. But certainly taking advantage of this check, which is like a 20-30 minute phone call before you run the extract, make sure everything's good, does tend to remove those the instances of those sort of little niggly problems. Running the Dimension extract process, we'll see what it looks like in a moment when we look at the software, but it is very much a set and forget process. It will run for a number of hours, quite possibly overnight, best part of a day. It really does depend on a couple of the settings, which again we'll look at as to in terms of how long it will take, but it is a set and forget process. Get it going on that machine that you've defined for the extract, walk away, let it do its thing. I mean, by all means, check its progress now and again. Let us know if you're concerned that it's taking too long, and we'll have a look. We'll get you to send us a log file, and we can check on its progress. When it's finished, it will let you know. You'll have a forced pop-up on the screen. Then what we get you to do is zip that resulting DWS Dimension folder and all of its subfolders into a big zip file, which will be probably around a gig or more. and get you to upload that to DWS. We won't look at specifically the upload process in this session. Again, it's all documented in the guides that we send you. And then once we receive that information, then the Dimension Focus's engine room forms that crunching, that analysis, that detailed analysis, building the cross-reference over production objects, and determining the impact of the change from the ESUs and what it will have on your system, including custom objects. Okay, let's have a look at the software. So what I'm going to do is jump over to, and sure enough, I've timed out, so let me sign back in. So I have installed, here's a reminder for this session, let's get rid of that. I have installed on my local machine, this is my UK machine, I've installed the software, and that software gets installed into a local DWS folder. This is the software that we see here. Part of the process then in terms of Dimension Focus is you will want to analyze a set of ESUs. So we create an ESUs folder here within the DWS folder. You'll recognize these things. These are ESUs that you will have downloaded, identified that you want them, and downloaded them from the Oracle website using their change system. You don't install these ESUs into the system. As I said earlier, we need to be able to compare what's in the ESUs versus what's in your pristine environment to know exactly what's changing. What we do get you to do though is expand those ESUs. We have a little expander utility, which again, I'm not going to cover in any sort of detail here, but that expander utility basically opens those ESUs and puts their content into this ESUs folder. So now we have a set of ESUs that we want to extract and have analyzed. We've installed the DWS Dimension Extract software. We've put it into this folder here. And the act of installing it also creates us an icon on the desktop, this guy here, for the Dimension Extract. So in ESU mode, to run the extract for Dimension Focus, let's kick it off. The very first pop-up we get is asking what mode we're going to run in. This is the only indication that I'll reference in terms of other services that we do. We do Dimension Analyze, we do Dimension Tempo, different services relating to customers who are upgrading from an earlier release of E1 up to 9.2. There's still a bunch of those guys around, so we have to cater for them to perform a retrofitting exercise to get them up to 9.2 to start with. But when you're at 9.2, and you decide you want to get current year on year, or you want to take in some ESUs because they're going to fix some business problem, but you're not sure what they're going to impact, then you would run Dimension Focus. So you choose the Dimension Focus mode. And then this is the software is so easy to use. We have 4 tabs, actually we have 5, but this is just some information, some contact us information. We can have a quick look at that. We don't really need to go there. Okay, so some information there, but the main fields that we need to populate on the screen in the connection information are the username and password. And for E1, and the environment that's going to access will be PD 920 for the modified environment, and our pristine environment is typically, these are typical naming conventions, PS 920. So that's our connection details. Then the very next tab is super easy because everything is grayed out, apart from one field, but that's just because of the settings I'm running with currently. That would also appear as grayed out when you run it. The extract tab is in relation to what is going to be selected from the production environment, the PD environment that we entered here in the connection tab. We are going to select, in this case, all objects from production. We're getting them from the central objects data source. We are extracting all the version overrides as well. We're going to pull some last run date information for your UBEs because that's presented to you in Dimension Focus as well. We don't need the data dictionary information. This is all grayed out because that's the default, that's what's going to be selected. Where you do have some options is in the ESU tab. So it's specifically in relation to the ESUs that were defined in this folder. We saw that earlier. That's where our ESUs are downloaded to and expanded. We are opting for the mode. We can just pull the ESU content only if you wished. It wouldn't be normal. That's why the default is we want to extract from production, pristine, and the ESUs. We're not going to merge that information. We want them to be separate extracts. We want all objects from the ESU. We can, on some exceptional circumstances, choose a list of selected objects from the ESU, but 99 times out of 100, we want all of the objects. We also want any version overrides that happen to be in the ESU, we want those too. If you have any localizations defined in your system, then you can choose to turn that on. You can select the localizations, the countries that apply to the localizations that you employ. And then finally, we get you to enter here on this tab the last install date environments, and the environments we're asking for here are the production environment and the dev environment. Now, the reason we get this information is when you install an ESU through the standard processing, Oracle's code will interrogate each of the objects in the ESU, and it will compare the date of the object in the ESU with the date of the object in your system currently. Because not all objects in all ESUs are necessarily installed. If the date of the object is older than what you already have, then that object is skipped. It only takes the objects that are relevant containing changes. And it does that using some logic that compares the dates across the system. And so we replicate that logic, but in order to do so, we need to know what the dates are, what the environments are, so that we can go and fetch that date information so that we can also exclude the objects in your nominated set of ESUs. So that's a fairly long-winded explanation to describe some basic things in here that I haven't changed. I've left the settings as a default. All I've done is entered these two fields in here. And then finally, with the extract, things that are also relevant to Dimension Focus is the menu data selection. So we definitely want to extract menu data, and we give it an environment that we want the menu data and the role information to come from. In this case, and in most cases, usually it's production, because that's the horse's mouth when it comes to your user roles, your menu setup, and so on. So menu setup from production, we definitely want to capture that menu information because Dimension Focus needs to know which objects, which applications, which UBEs sit on menus, so it can identify what the parents, what the correct parent objects are. Then we can select a bit of an explanation with each of these settings. We can select a set of users and or roles that will be used for menu data analysis. Now, you can choose when Dimension Focus presents its results. Let's say it's an update you're having analyzed, and an update might contain 5,000 objects. And that might have a knock-on effect to, let's say, 10,000 applications and UBEs across the board that might need testing. When you're presented with this information, 10,000 applications and UBEs is a lot. So you need a way of filtering that information, breaking it down so that you can allocate it to testing in groups, groups of objects to different people in your organization, different test people who will be performing the testing. So being able to filter the information by your own roles and or users is a really cool thing to do. So you can say, right, show me all of the applications and UBEs that are used by the sales administrator role or by the AP clerk's role. How that information is filtered is based on this field here. So you can nominate the users and or roles in your organizations that you wish to filter by. We typically say don't choose sysadmin because they're going to have access to everything anyway. That filtering on that is going to be useless. It'll show all the results. filter by the areas that typically perform the testing. So like a key role for sales administration, a key role for AP, a key role for AR, etc., etc. System code selection. We by default give you a bunch of mandatory system codes, not 40, but all of the others are mandatory system codes related to either common foundation or system related system codes. But you can nominate your own system codes, and we absolutely recommend or require you to do so, to nominate the system codes, the functional areas that you as an organization use in the business. The reason for doing this is, in my previous example, I said you're wanting to have analyzed an update, and it results in 10,000 applications and UBEs being impacted as parent objects to one or more of the child objects that are in these ESUs or in the update. 10,000's a lot, and often with low-level business functions, for example, that have been changed by the ESU, business functions that are called by parents that span many, many functional areas, including functional areas that you don't use. You don't really want to see the fact that 200 parent objects in the HR system code are impacted by this ESU if you don't use the HR system, and you never will intend on using the HR system. That would be additional information that's just getting in the way. So by selecting the system codes that you employ as an organization here means that the information provided by Dimension Focus is relevant to the functional areas that you use. We're not showing you other areas that you don't use, in other words. And finally, the common object selection allows us to nominate, or allows you to nominate, any objects that are what's the best way of describing this? Objects that perform very finite specific activities, but that are used everywhere. So they're common objects. A perfect example would be B98000100, get audit information. That business function is probably used in 95+% of the apps and UBEs in the wider system. And if Oracle change it in an ESU, and they sometimes do, then you're going to have many, many thousands of apps and UBEs impacted from this one object. Do you need to test that get audit information 12,000 times? The answer is, of course, no. For these specific common objects, if you choose to activate this logic, you don't have to, but if you choose to do it, it means that if those objects are changed by the ESU, then we limit the numbers of results to, I think it's 100 objects impacted, as opposed to many, many thousands, because you don't need to test these things thousands and thousands of times, especially when they meet the criteria of these objects. And that is it. You hit the begin button. The application will give you a couple of pop-ups to verify that this is the settings that you want. You hit the go button, and away it goes. The extract will run. And when that extract runs, or as it's running, it will produce information in this folder here. Environment. In this case, I've got some ESU objects in the different folders. And as the extract runs, you will see this information being built out and objects appearing, or files appearing in these folders. And that is pretty much the end of my presentation, how to use the Dimension Extract software. As a final word, I'd say definitely involve DWS to help with your extract process. It isn't difficult to do, but it's also kind of easy to get a few settings wrong as well. So involve us, take advantage of the resources that we have available, whether it's Dimension support staff or our CNC guys to help out if needs be, and absolutely refer to the user guides and other supporting documents that we send, because we're here to help. So yeah, that is the presentation.
That's great. Thanks, Lee. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat now. We'll be happy to answer them, or you can email us at sam@dwsglobal.com. And we look forward to seeing you at the next session and hearing from you about any future topics you'd like to cover or any other tips or tricks you want to hear from our software. So thanks very much, Lee. And as we don't have any questions, I will end the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.